Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of the Hearthstone Half Hour. I'm Hammy from felcroft.org. Firstly, thanks very much for all of your feedback on last episode where we went through some of the new patch changes upcoming this January with some of the new cards. Seem to go down pretty well, so going forward we will grab a video and do similar whenever there are some new card changes coming up. So thanks very much for your feedback and your comments, and please keep it coming as always. Really appreciate hearing from you. So after a lot of doing a bit of arena and similar over the last few episodes, tonight we are finally going back into rank ladder. It's been a little while since we've been in. We got to about rank, maybe, I don't know, it's 10 or 9 in test season 1, and now it is test season 2. So we're going to get straight back in. We're still using our pre-Stekken format at the moment, but I think soon we're probably going to try and experiment with Druid or maybe Mage, given that A, they're quite popular in the current archetypes, and B, because we need to learn some new classes. So without further ado, let's jump straight in to today's episode. As we jump into the ladder, today's topic that we're going to go through, we are laddering, so we're going to be going through a bit of laddering. You can see my deck list as it exists at the moment on the right here. The theme of this priest deck is all of the usual priest control. Come out late in the game with Ragnaros, and I'm saving up for a Prophet Velen, but in the middle, meantime I've got a Cabal Shadow Priest for a little bit of mind control and to whip a few minions away. But the aim of this deck is to very much keep control in the early game, if at all possible. Occasionally struggles a little bit against area effect decks, so I need to be careful about people who try and rush me. Aggro decks, be they Paladin, Murloc, Warlock, you name it, any of that kind of thing, I need to get out early. But one thing for new to sort of intermediate players is, just like chess, when you start learning a card game or a collectible card game, it's sort of how to think ahead, read ahead, and how to balance that kind of thing. In card games, naturally there's the element of random luck, so you're not going to be sure what you're drawing next, and you're not going to be entirely sure what your opponent is going to be drawing next. However, you can minimalise that a bit and sort of shrink the kind of uncertainty by A, knowing your deck really well, and B, making sure that as much as possible you have a good idea of the different kinds of deck archetypes that are out there. Very similar to chess in some ways, you're always wanting, if at all possible, to try and think maybe a move ahead, certainly a move ahead for yourself, without sort of second guessing what your opponent is going to do too much. So today's topic, with that in mind, is just introducing a bit about learning how to think ahead. Now, as I play in these games, I'm going to be putting out some ideas. When I've been playing through games previously, I've been talking more about the decisions I've been making. In this episode, I'm going to be playing, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about what decisions I think my opponent might be making, looking at his cards, and without getting into the world of massive speculation, trying to give you newer to intermediate players just a bit of an idea as to some different thought patterns you can take when you sort of see your opponent's cards hit the deck, when you see him make certain moves. And with thinking ahead, or with trying to read your opponent, you're not psychic. We've got a Mage. That's going to be Jesus Christ with 2 Zs. The Holy Mage was a Shadow Priest, well, as priests can sometimes be called. So before we start thinking about reading ahead and trying to sort of work out how the game might go on from here and look at our opponents go, let's firstly get our own affairs in order. My starting hand, I generally always want, if at all possible, a Northshire Cleric. All of those cards are very high mana cost, and I'm going second, so I'm going to trade in all of those. I could have traded in that Power Word Shield, and I've got a pretty useless Cabal Shadow Priest until the end of the game. I've got a Smites. Smites are always good. I've still got my Power Word Shield, and I've got my coin as well, but I don't have either my Light Warden or my Northshire Cleric, and those are my two kind of very key early cards. So for a Mage, not to be able to play anything first go is not massively unusual. They have a lot of, if they're going to drop some minions, so as soon as I see a Mage hit the deck, let's try and read ahead straight from the off. As soon as I see a Mage hit the deck, I'm thinking, is he going to be playing a nuke deck, something with lots of Pyroblasts? Is he going to be playing a Mage Giant deck, something that really tries to sort of drop giants when he has a lot of cards in his hand, or when he's taken a lot of damage late in the game? Or maybe, you know, the standard good Mage cards, is he going to play a very control focused deck with lots of freezes and that kind of thing that will lock down my minions and make them fairly useless. For my go, I don't have a huge choice first turn. Dropping the Northshire Cleric and the reason that I'm going to use my coin and drop my power word shield, if you drop the Northshire Cleric in your first turn, it's a big bait, it's a big sort of red rag to a bull that you're waving in front of your opponent, and very, very often they will try and take it out first go, or maybe second go. So we've seen my opponent play a Novice Engineer. Now, Novice Engineer is kind of very, very common just for the draw ability. A lot of Mage decks revolve around drawing a bunch of cards, so I can't really tell too much, apart from the fact that he wants to draw cards, as everyone in card games does. My turn 2. I've obviously used my coin. It's actually kind of worth, in this situation, me damaging myself. And if I damage myself for 1 here, I can heal myself to draw another card. I want a lot of healing in this early game. Now, I could have also had that Holy Smite to take out his Novice Engineer, but I can take that out in a turn anyway. So in thinking of reading ahead, in the 3 mana zone, a Mirror Image, 2 minions with Taunt, and I'm certainly not going to be getting past him anytime soon. Now, the interesting thing here, note, is that he's put up some stalling cards, he's put up some tanks in the form of those 2 Mirror Images, he's used his 2 mana to zap my hero, and he's attacked for 1 with my hero. So when you're playing a mage, in terms of trying to think ahead and reading ahead, if they're putting a lot of early damage on your hero, that could be indicating that they're going for some kind of Pyroblast nuke deck, real aggro deck. Now the reason for that is obviously because Pyroblast does 10 damage, there are so many cards that increase spell power, so the amount of cards that spells do. Any focus by a mage to get lots of damage on your hero, almost regardless of anything else in the early game, you've got to look at a little bit suspiciously. And wonder a bit as to what exactly is going on there. Okay, so in terms of my go, I'm not going to, unless I damage my own card, be able to zap anything away too easily. I'm going to start clearing down, I think, these minions and get some bits out of the way. So, in terms of reading ahead now, what I've tried to do is I could have zapped his Novice Engineer with that Holy Smite, but I just wanted to remove one of the tanks. So, now we're on to the 4 mana turn. Let's have a look and see what this Mage does now. Is he going to try and keep doing damage to my hero? Is he going to start Frost Novering, or, you know, Cone of Colding, or lots of similar abilities? He's going to want to try and control my minions. Arcane Missiles is a nice cheap card. Does a bit of damage. He's got my priest down a couple of points. He's zapped me for 1 there as well, and he's going to be able to trade. Yeah. So he's taken at the trade because he knows I'll heal, and that Light Warden would have got buffed up pretty quick. Okay, so with 4 mana, I've got a fairly straightforward play here. I could drop my Orkney Soul Priest, but the Orkney Soul Priest and the Circle of Healing are my combo to get rid of anything on the board later in the game. So I'm going to get rid of his tank. The heal gives me an easy card draw there, which I shall do. And now I can't do anything sadly with my remaining 2 mana. My other play would have probably been to maybe drop the Orkney Soul Priest, but again, that's very much a red rag to a bull, and it's worth keeping that in hand to drop with the Circle of Healing if at all possible. The other option is dropping that and using some heals to ping various minions for 2. Well, now we're at the 5 mana stage, and either my mage opponent is having a few sort of draw problems, and there you go, he's gone for an Arcane Intellect. So I would have expected a bit more damage on my hero by now, maybe perhaps a couple more minions, but do note that whatever cards he's holding in his hand, he's quite happy to use 2 mana to keep pinging away my hero. So his focus has been on whittling down my hero's health. To me, it's not proven yet because I've not seen the precise cards. Who knows what he's got in this hand of 7, but that's a reasonable indicator that he's going to try and nuke me, and that there'll be a couple of 8 mana Pyroblasts coming out later in the game. So therefore, how can I keep myself safe based off that read? My first decision is going to be to keep my hero's health as high as possible. A fairly straightforward play. Really just making sure that I look after myself, as it were. So for the time being, I could drop a heal on my hero, just because I don't want anything to happen and because I want to draw a card. I'm going to drop a heal on my injured Blade Master for the time being, and then I'll just ping for 1 with my priest. But what I really need to do is keep a very careful eye on my priest's health. As soon as my priest gets to about 20, or close to 20, I want to start healing myself and keeping myself above 20, because if he has 2 Pyroblasts in his hand in 2 straight turns, he wins the match, and that gets me, no matter how good my table position is, in trouble very, very quickly. So I'm suspicious for Pyroblasts, given the fact that he's always trying to damage my hero here, and he's got a fistful of hands and is not doing much. Now with his fistful of cards in his hand, the other indicator that could mean for a mage is that he's playing Mage Giants. Now you've got your various kinds of giants, and one of the giant cards costs less mana to play, and a polymorph. He's gone for the poly. Interestingly, he's trying to stop me drawing, and he's going to ping that away. So he's at this point decided that he doesn't want to give me the luxury of drawing as many cards as I like. However, he's still going to let me do damage. So I've got a couple of decisions I could make here at the 6 mana point. There seems to be a pretty good one. The Abomination is a tech card in this deck for if I face swarm decks that have lots of low health. The Cable Shadow Priest, I only really want to drop to mind control something, maybe a low attack tank. Circle of Healing really goes hand in hand with the Organized Soul Priest. I could charge with an Argent Commander, but that's generally a trade. I want to make sure I trade something away for that. So there is one pretty solid play here. I can get 2 hard-hitting minions on the deck, and then by healing my Injured Blade Master up, I can trigger the 2 attack on my Light Warden. So with another 4 damage there. The Circle of Healing I could really top everything up with, but I'm feeling in a pretty solid place at this moment in time. However, with that 7 mana and with the amount of cards he has in his hand, anything could happen. Cone of Cold, and here's where now, when the mage has got a stuffed hand of cards, we see him jamming his hand for as many cards as possible, and we should really be looking to expect those nukes, or maybe the giants coming down now. Naturally the freeze has totally debilitated me for an entire turn, so I need to have a think about what I can do to keep the pressure on. Circle of Healing is quite a reasonable option at this point in time. It does not look as though he's going to be dropping loads of small minions, which is generally what the Circle of Healing and Organized Soul Priest is for. I'd like to keep all of my cards quite topped up in terms of health, and I'd like to keep my hero topped up too. With that in mind, I'm going to keep the pressure on with an Argent Commander, and I'm going to heal up my minions with Circle of Healing. Now the benefit of healing up my minions is that I will also really buff up this Light Warden. So that Light Warden is quite a threat now. There's nothing else I can do. I want to kind of force the mage to deal with this Light Warden now, because if he doesn't, let's face it, I have pretty much a knockout next go in terms of the amount of damage I can deal. So a mage at this point in the game, if he's trying to nuke me down, could freeze and use all of his different freezing abilities and just hold me out until he can shoot me down for the win. He's got a charge, he's frost over me again. And note that he's used his Faceless Manipulator to copy me and put some more pressure on with an Argent Commander. Now with 8 mana, I need to take that Argent Commander carefully and have a think as to what I can do. I reckon he's got a couple of, at least 1 pyro in his hand by now. Now there's no easy way that I'm going to be able to kill that in one go. I will probably want to top my health up with 2 now at this stage, but I can also remove the bubble on him with an Argent Commander. Removing the bubble on him would let me ping him with an Organized Soul Priest next go and remove the threat. I think I'm going to go for that. It's a little bit risky. The Organized Soul Priest would also let me remove the bubble and kill him next go, but the Argent Commander gives me another threat on the table. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but I would prefer at this stage to be able to heal myself, and then I can trigger another buff on that guy and keep up the pressure on him. So I could have dropped an Organized Soul Priest there and used a heal, and the heal obviously with the Organized Soul Priest ability would have removed the bubble because it does damage instead. So at the 9 mana stage, in terms of still trying to think ahead, my mage pal is either in a bit of trouble here. He's been played both his arcane intellects and just drawn. He's not been able to fully control me, so maybe he didn't have the best starting draw, but with the way he's played, I'm really thinking he's going to try pyro me. If he had giants, I think he would have dropped one of them at least by now. So I've got so many attacking threats on the table here. he doesn't have an easy way of getting rid of them all in one go unless he's got a couple of Cone of Colds or a Frost Nova or a Blizzard or something similar. So with 9 cards in his hand, there we go, that removes the bubbles. That means Flame Strike, a good play. So now he's taken his AoE and he's going to stop trying to remove other things, but he had to deal with me then, because if he didn't, I would have stomped him the next go, and he has no tanks. No, there's nothing with a taunt ability here that will be able to save him. So this now happily puts me a little bit back on the front foot. I'm going to be using heal to ping the Sergeant Commander away. The reason for that is because it saves my attack. Now with 3 mana left, there's nothing else I can do, but I can put some more pressure on him. And don't get confident or cocky, kid, as Indiana Jones would say, because this is feeling like a Mage Pyro deck. So from that perspective, you've always got to be careful. 24 health can disappear in the fraction of an eye. So for that reason, we just need to keep our minds open. Going back to our initial theme of trying to read ahead, in this game, it's not been the best example, because I think our Mage might have had a bit of a tough draw. That's an interesting play. You can chuck a couple of secrets down. Now the Wild Pyromancer there was a very nice bit of tech. Note that after you cast a spell, you do 1 damage to all minions. So by chucking his spells down, he managed to zap away the remaining health of the cards I had on the deck. So he cleared the deck, he's got his secret down. We'll do a topic on how to read secrets at some point, or how to trigger secrets. Suffice to say, it's a Mage secret. It could be Ice Block, it could be something to do with minions. So for me to work out what it is, I just need to make sure that I play carefully around it, as it were. I'm not going to let him draw more cards. The K-Bell Shadow Priest, there could have been a slightly different play there, but I'm going to take that off him. I don't need to silence any of my minions. Bringing in the Orkanite Shadow Priest gives me an additional offensive threat, but he could have another Flame Strike. Remember how painful that was. I think keeping my health on a nice high at the moment is probably a good play. The Orkanite Shadow Priest I just feel like looking after for the time being. I'm going to risk it. The healing of myself would have been a safe play, so really playing the Orkanite Shadow Priest is me just trying to use up the mana. At this point in time, if he's going to throw anything at me, you've noted the incredibly small amount of minions that we've seen. So his minions are stuck in the bottom of his deck, or it's really a very heavy spell-based deck. And also by dropping that minion, when I attack him with a minion, we'll see if that's an Ice Block or similar. Okay, Violet Apprentice Teacher, Fireball, wants to get rid of that straight away. Fair cool. Lets me draw a card. And that is a nice little card to pick out. My Shadow Word Pains have been pretty absent so far, but that just really lets me... Oh, no, I don't want a Holy Nova. Take your time, Craig. And Shadow Word Pain just lets us cheaply for mana remove that threat. I'm not too concerned about this Violet Apprentice right now. What I really need to think about is putting a bit of pressure on.
Well played.
So this... Oh! A surrender.
Well played.
Lovely. So I think there could have been a bit more in that game, but I was on the front foot. So fair play to Jesus Christ. He's got that going pretty quickly. We've got about 5 to 10 minutes left of this episode if we're sticking to the half hour, so I'm just going to quickly see if I can sneak another one in to get a little bit of a better example. In that game we tried to read ahead a bit, and you probably saw there how taking a look at what the opponent was playing, knowing a bit about the deck and the hero types, and therefore knowing a little bit about what common deck types you can expect is useful. I think we were a little bit held up there though, sadly, because he was having a bit of a tough time with his draw. I don't think we really saw his whole deck, but some of his behaviour that we saw was quite reflective of a Mage nuking deck, and we played accordingly, kept our health high, tried to keep the minions down, and although we may have got a bit lucky, it came out pretty well in the end. We've now got a Priest mirror match here versus a Holy Whiskey, and as per usual, I'd like to try and get a Northshire Cleric and some of my cheap cost cards in at the beginning to try and keep control. What I do get is a 10 mana mind control. It's not going to help me too much right now. So we now have a Priest mirror match here, which will be very interesting as I play Priest, and as you can see my Priest deck that I'm playing right now, reading ahead will be interesting. So I can tell you for free in terms of Priest, he could be playing a Priest deck like mine, he could be playing a Priest deck revolved around various buffs or all kinds of things, and he's dropped a River Crocolisk. That is an interesting play. You see a lot of those in the starter decks, so we will see. You should never judge a book by its cover. It's not the most common card that you see in any kind of constructed deck, the River Crocolisk, unless perhaps with hunters who use beasts. So, now I can't attack him because obviously I'm going to get knocked down. Really, that's kind of an easy turn 2 play here, which is just setting myself up for the trade. I'm not going to kill the Crocolisk, but if he's going to kill me, then at least I'll make sure his minion definitely goes by pinging him for 2 with Holy Smite. Force the mana heal out of him, but he still trades that away. So, unless he had nothing else to spend that 2 mana on, he's kind of wasted 2 mana for that trade. Maybe he had nothing else, I just don't know. Coming up to this turn, I'm going to keep Holy Smite in my hand at this moment in time because, to be quite frank, it's useful in reducing minions' health or removing pesky 2 health 3 attack minions. And also, I don't really have any other readers on what my opponent is doing at this point in time. We've seen him drop a River Crocolisk and drop a heal, so he's not really played any cards that can really show me what he's trying to do. I'm going to hold the Spellbreaker because that Battle Cry of Silence is very handy. To make sure I use my mana, I'm going to drop an Orkanized Soul Priest. I don't really like dropping the Orkanized Soul Priest on its own, but in quite an open game situation like this, maybe it will pull a Shadow Word Pain from him and he'll take it out for 2 mana. Possible. So in a Priest mirror match, this is generally a bit of a risky play. But what I could really do with is just having some idea of what his deck theme is. So in our theme of reading ahead, we're kind of waiting for a bit of a tell from him, poker style at the moment. Just waiting to see what he drops, what he starts playing, what his key combinations are. We dropped an Oasis Snapjaw. Again, it's not that non-rare cards are necessarily bad, and there are actually some good uses for cards with high health that are relatively cheap. You know, the Priest has got some quite fun tools like Inner Fire and Divine Spirit. So for those of you who don't know, you can double a minion's health and then make a minion's attack equal to its health. So if you double 7 to 14 and then give it 14 attack and 14 health, for 4 mana that Oasis Snapjaw could become an unstoppable force. It's a good job we have a silence in our pocket. So for the time being, I could actually kill this guy in one go. And this is, some might say overkill. Because I've not seen anything else yet, I could have held those in my hand, and maybe it'll, in the coming turns that will prove to be a better decision. But because priests do have Inner Fire and Divine Spirit, it wouldn't take long for him to very quickly buff up that 2/7 into something very, very nasty. So I'm going to take Discretion as the better course of Valor for the time being and get rid of it. Now the Giribashi Berserker is a real solid sparring card, particularly for a common that turns up in some of the core decks, due to the fact that you can damage your own minions and buff him up very, very quickly. Thankfully, I've just drawn a Shadow Word Pain, so that allows me again to very easily drop him off the table. I can attack for 3. Now I've got a choice. I mean, I could Battle Cry Silence, but I kind of want to keep that silence just in case something nasty comes up. So I'm going to use the Morphed Lesser Heal through the dark urges of the Orkanized Soul Priest. My heal is now a 2 damage card. 2 mana, 2 damage. So I'll ping away, and let's wait and see what happens here. In terms of looking ahead and trying to read ahead a bit, you can never go too far ahead, but at the same time,
We must
all we've
cleanse
seen
the
so
sunlight.
far are some very vanilla priest cards. And there you go, we've got a nice little combo there. He's managed to force a few more cards into his hand and buff up a couple of his cards too. Spell breaking in this situation is perfect because it will let me totally remove all of the cleric's danger, which I'm going to do now.
Shall not save you.
No longer can heal, no longer 2/6, lovely. I'm going to have to health ping with the Orkanai, show Soul Priest's ability, and then I think I'm just going to take him away as well. So though my Orkanai Soul Priest is now almost dead, if at all possible, I've still not, in terms of trying to read ahead or gauge my opponent too much, seen anything of what he's up to. So in this situation what I have to do is just try and keep as much control as possible. You can't really play a whole game sitting around waiting for your opponent to make a move. They could have bad draw, they could be suffering, they might have a bad deck. You just don't know, so you need to keep your game plan going, but when you're trying to read ahead, try and take little tells, try and recognise those little signs, but don't overreact to them, because otherwise you'll get your game plan being a little bit derailed. Okie dokie. I don't want to Holy Nova, of course, because that would do 2 damage to my minions. That would be most foolish. A Holy Fire would, I could pick him off. I don't need to heal myself, so that's a little bit of a mana and inefficient play at this point in time. And at the same time, I don't really want to lose my Orkanai Soul Priest, but at this point in time, actually, you know what? That's not going to do me too much harm. I've got a decision here to make. I can do an extra 2 damage by using that first. I will trade because I'm in a dominant field position, and then I'll attack with my Spellbreaker. And what that then leaves me, I could drop a Spellbreak, but again that silence in hand is nice. I don't want to lose that 5 health heal unless I'm really in a dominant position and I can nuke him down. So saving that mana in that situation, even though I didn't spend it, it's better to have those cards in hand. And we've got a nice little reason why, because Sen'jin Shieldmaster has just been dropped. Okie dokie, well, there's a very obvious silence play there. Moves both his buff and his tankiness. That really, really helps me out. Whoa! 2 damage. I was about to Power Word Shield there, but again, there's a better play here. And that better play is to Holy Nova. Now, I am wasting the heal component of this, but what that lets me do is, again, just keep the pressure coming. Now, he could choose to trade and hurt me here. He can't kill both of my minions. So for that reason, I'm going to put another 4 damage onto his hero and keep that pressure coming. What we've seen here so far is, unless something, he's really had bad draw, Holy Fire, okay, heals him and takes the pressure off, and there he trades the table down with the Light Well as well. Next turn he will start healing himself for 3 a go, so I kind of like to get rid of that Light Well. And what I'm going to do is, it's going to be expensive, but in this situation I could even mana control the Light Well, which would be very, very cruel. But I don't know what big minions he has, so for that reason Holy Fire gets the nod. Let's drop a Blade Master, and then with my final 1 mana I'm going to buff it and draw. At this point in the game he has healed himself a bit, but given that I've picked off a few of his minions, he's not managed to get a full combo out, and he's not drawn a huge amount of cards, I'll tentatively say that I'm on the upper foot. Again, it's not been the best example in terms of trying to read forward this game, so I do apologise for that, but one of the lessons we've learnt is that if there's nothing coming and you're not getting any hints or clues, don't assume that your opponent's got a bad deck. He might just be having bad draw, or, you know, having a bit of bad luck. But at the same time, you've got to make sure that your game plan keeps going. Don't get too caught up in having all of your plays dictated to by what your opponent might be doing. What I've just done there is really the only sensible play. Kind of nice to keep your Argent Commanders in hand in case you've got to do an emergency trade, but if there's no enemy minions to oppose you, then you're getting that damage in. Out comes the Holy Nova, so he gets rid of my threatening Argent Commander. Keeps his Stormwind Knight in play, so that's all pretty solid. Now I've got a couple of choices here. I could trade him off the table with the Argent Commander, or I could steal him for my nefarious purposes with the Cabal Shadow Priest. Now this Shadow Priest is kind of a swap for profit Velen. I'd really swap this for a Velen in a full deck, and I generally keep this to try and take one of those pesky tank minions that has a lot of health but low attack. However, on this occasion, and he may well decide that he actually wants to. Now note that because the Storm Knight has a charge ability, I can actually go right ahead and attack with him this game, which is quite fun. And in that situation, an equally valid play would have been to heal my injured Blade Master. Which he's clearly going to try and take out.
Well played.
Oh, he's really struggling. So, in the absence of any other play, I've got a fairly straightforward play here. Drop the Northshire Cleric. You could be tempted to play Argent Commander right away, but of course, draw cards first. Who knows, there might be something better that I want to play. Holy Fire, again, not huge use in that right now. So, let's push for the win. One more play to you, sir. And happily, that's a little step up to Tauren Warrior with 2 straight wins. So, thank you very much for tuning into that Hearthstone Half Hour. Our aim this episode was to go into a bit of a talk and try and use in a live game context a bit of a chat about how you can start trying to think about how to read ahead and look ahead when it comes to not second guessing, not trying to predict the future or be some kind of clairvoyant, but trying to, in a similar vein to poker or any card game that you play, take a look at what your opponent's up to, what kind of cards they're playing and when, and what kind of behaviour that they're showing. We had a Mage example there, and a Priest example too. And using those tells, not getting carried away by them, but keeping an eye on them, trying to get some kind of read as to what your opponent is going to do. From that, you can then see what position your opponent's actually in, and then from that, you can let it sort of steer your play, but you shouldn't let it dictate your play. It's too easy in any game like this, and in real-time strategy, StarCraft is a similar example, to always be reacting to your opponent. What you want to be doing is knowing what your opponent will be trying to do and blocking that if you can, but then really trying to dictate the play so your opponent can react to you. Lady Luck is a big part of this. You'll never know, just because of the luck of the draw and the luck of the cards. Having the luck of the Irish would be useful as well. But being able to have a little think ahead, knowing your opponent's basic deck types, if not every single card that they might have in them, and a bit about how roughly they're going to play will really help you when it comes to some of your card choices and some of your decisions in Hearthstone. Thank you very much for tuning in. In our next episode, we're probably going to be back into the arena. We'll probably do a little bit more priest laddering as well. We will keep up with the news videos because they seem to have gone down really well with you guys. Thank you very much for your sharing, liking and watching. And what we'll try and introduce also, in terms of a rotation of themes and concepts, is a Fun Friday, or a similar kind of one day a week where we do a cast that's simply just sheer fun, taking a fun deck, jumping into something else, or maybe jumping into another game every now and then. We gave a League of Legends stream in the other night, which was very entertaining, if not for the sheer malcoordination of trying to play that fast-paced game and cast and explain it for beginners at the same time. But we'll be introducing a few new show types into the loop as well, so please, as always, with our sign-off, feedback when you can. We love to hear what's good. We love to hear as well what you think we could do better, any kind of feedback. And if you like it, if you think your friends will like it, give it a share, give it a like, really keeps us going. Twitter.com/Felcroftcasts, YouTube.com/Felcroftcasts, and if you're live on Twitch or you want to look on Twitch too, it's twitch.tv/Felcroftcasts. And naturally the website is felcroft.org. I've been Hammy, thank you very much for tuning in.